6 months later, the galaxy looked different. The Human Tactical Institute stood on a moon orbiting Earth. The building was new, all glass and steel, designed to house students from 100 different worlds. Inside, alien cadets learned how humans thought about war. Commander Minho walked into a classroom filled with 30 young officers from various species. Some had scales, some had fur, some breathed different atmospheres and had to wear protective suits, but all of them were here for the same reason. They wanted to understand human military strategy. Today's lesson, Minho announced, is about acceptable risk versus stupid risk. He pulled up a simulation on the holographic display. You are commanding a destroyer. The enemy fleet outnumbers you 10 to 1. What do? The alien cadets tried different approaches. One attempted a fighting retreat. Another tried to call for reinforcements. A third tried to negotiate. All reasonable strategies. All failures in the simulation. Now watch what a human would do, Minho said. He ran his own version. The human destroyer charged straight at the enemy command ship, ignoring all other targets. At the last second, it detonated its entire ammunition supply in a controlled explosion, destroying itself and 3 enemy capital ships. The crew escaped in pods. That's insane, a reptilian cadet protested. Yes, Minho agreed calmly. But your fleet survived. Sometimes insanity is the most logical choice. The cadets looked disturbed. This was exactly why they needed to be here learning this. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years fighting wars according to established rules. Then humanity arrived and ignored all those rules. In another part of the institute, Dr. Yuna was giving a lecture on quantum collapse technology. Her audience included scientists from 12 different species, all taking careful notes. The quantum collapse bomb was never meant to be used, Yuna explained, and there was sadness in her voice. We designed it as a theoretical weapon, a deterrent. Using it against the Vex caused them immense suffering. Individual consciousness separated from their collective is traumatic for hive mind species. A chitin scientist raised a claw. Then was Commander Kim wrong to use it? Yuna considered this carefully. He had to choose between the suffering of an enemy and the deaths of 4 billion innocents. War forces impossible choices. The question isn't whether he was wrong. The question is whether you could make the same choice when lives depend on it. The classroom fell silent. This was the uncomfortable truth about human warfare. Humans didn't fight clean wars. They fought to win, accepting costs that other species found horrifying. At the council headquarters, things had changed too. The massive chamber where representatives debated still existed, but now there was something new: the Emergency Response Directorate. When a crisis emerged, instead of debating for hours, the Directorate could authorize immediate military action. Admiral Taeyang, a human, ran the Directorate. He was 52, gray-haired with eyes that had seen too many battles. His job was to prevent another 8-hour debate while people died. Today, he was briefing the council on the new protocols. When a threat is identified, we have a response team ready to deploy within 30 minutes. No debate, no committee formations. We act, then report. Chancellor Vorn, who had opposed this change initially, now nodded approval. The Redstone battle had taught him that sometimes action was more important than consensus. And if the response team makes a mistake? One ambassador asked. Then we deal with it, Taeyang replied bluntly. But a fast mistake is better than a slow, correct decision that comes too late to matter. Elsewhere in the station, Daeho himself was preparing for a ceremony. 6 months after Redstone, the council was finally ready to formally honor him. He stood in his dress uniform, Jiwon helping him straighten his medals. Nervous? She asked. I hate ceremonies, Daeho admitted. I prefer the part where I do things, not the part where people talk about things I did. You're going to have to get used to it, Jiwon said. You're famous now. Every cadet in the galaxy knows your name. Daeho looked uncomfortable with that. He had never wanted fame. He just wanted to stop the Vex to save lives. But fame came anyway, whether he wanted it or not. The ceremony was held in the same council chamber where, months ago, Daeho had walked out. Now it was filled with representatives from every world, all here to honor him. Chancellor Vorn stood at the podium. Commander Daeho Kim, he announced formally, for extraordinary courage and tactical brilliance in the defense of Redstone III, and for ending the Vex incursion, the Galactic Council awards you the Star of Valor, our highest military honor. The chamber erupted in applause. Daeho walked to the podium, accepting the medal. It was a crystalline star that caught the light, beautiful and heavy. He was supposed to give a speech. He looked at the assembled representatives, all these beings from distant worlds, all waiting for him to say something profound. "Thank you," he said simply. Then he paused. "But I want to make something clear. What happened at Redstone wasn't about one person or one ship. It was about choosing action over inaction. It was about being willing to take risks to save lives." He held up the medal. "This represents a choice the galaxy has to make. Do we want to be the species that debates while civilizations fall, or do we want to be the species that acts when action is needed?" Daeho placed the medal on the podium. "I'll leave this here as a reminder. The next time you're in this chamber facing a crisis, and you've been debating for too long, remember, sometimes the best solution is the simplest one." He smiled slightly. That same sharp smile from 6 months ago. "Screw it. Hold my beer." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then Sage Loomis began to glow brighter, their species equivalent of applause. Others joined in, and soon the entire chamber was cheering. Ambassador Mira, watching from her seat, wiped tears from her eyes. She had known Daeho would say something like this. Humans didn't do humble. They did honest. After the ceremony, Daeho found himself surrounded by young officers from various species, all wanting to ask questions, to learn, to understand how he thought. "How did you know your plan would work?" One asked. "I didn't," Daeho admitted. "I knew it could work." "That was enough. What if you had failed?" Another asked. "Then I would have died trying," Daeho said simply. "But I would have tried. That's the difference between humans and most other species. We'd rather fail trying than succeed at nothing." Later, Daeho met with his old crew. Jiwon was now a commodore commanding 3 ships. Hyun had been promoted to full lieutenant and was teaching at the Tactical Institute. Sora had retired but was consulting on ship design, making sure the next generation of vessels could handle crazy plans like Daeho's. They gathered in a bar near the station, a quiet place where they could talk freely. "To the indomitable spirit," Jiwon said, raising her glass. "May she rest in peace." The ship had been turned into a museum after repairs were deemed too expensive. Now she floated at the council station, a monument to what one crew accomplished. "To crazy plans that somehow work," Hyun added. "To primitive weapons in a high-tech war," Sora said with a laugh. Daeho raised his own glass. "To all of you. I couldn't have done it without you." They drank in comfortable silence, these humans who had changed galactic history. They didn't feel like heroes. They just felt like people who had done their jobs when it mattered. Around the galaxy, the impact of Redstone continued to grow. Council military forces now included humans in every major fleet, providing tactical advice. Several species had begun studying Earth's military history, fascinated by how humans had fought each other for thousands of years before reaching the stars. The Vex remained in their own territory, quiet and cautious. They were learning, adapting as they always did. But now they adapted with respect for an enemy they had underestimated. And in every Council War College, in every tactical planning session, there was a new saying that everyone knew. When debates dragged on, when plans became too complicated, when people were overthinking, someone would say it. "Screw it. Hold my beer." It meant stop talking, start doing. It meant sometimes the brave choice is the right choice. It meant be human. The galaxy had spent 10,000 years perfecting careful, measured, calculated warfare. Then humanity arrived and reminded everyone that sometimes you need to be a little crazy. Sometimes you need to charge straight into the enemy's teeth with a stupid plan and pure courage. Sometimes you need to debate for 8 hours and then act for 3 minutes. Daeho finished his drink and looked at his friends. These people who had trusted him enough to fly into certain death. "Ready for the next adventure?" he asked. Jiwon smiled. "Always. Because that was the thing about humans. They were never satisfied with peace. They were always looking for the next challenge, the next impossible situation, the next problem that needed solving. The galaxy had learned to fear the Vex. Now it was learning to respect humanity. And somewhere, in a bar on a space station, Commander Daeho Kim ordered another beer and smiled at the future. The war was over. New wars would come. And when they did, humanity would be ready, with stupid plans, primitive weapons, and courage that bordered on insanity. It was the human way. 3 hours passed faster than anyone expected. The indomitable spirit dropped out of warp at the edge of the redstone system, and suddenly everything became very real. Sensors show 47 Vex capital ships, Hyun reported, his voice steadier than he felt. 212 support vessels. They're surrounding Redstone III. The planet's shields are failing. On the view screen, the Vex fleet looked like a swarm of metal insects. Each ship was dark and angular, covered in strange symbols that glowed with red light. They moved in perfect coordination, a single massive organism made of thousands of parts. They've detected us, Jiwon said. The fleet is repositioning. They're forming an interception pattern. Daeho leaned forward in his chair. Time to contact? At current speed, 2 minutes and 30 seconds until we reach weapons range. Increase to maximum speed, Daeho ordered. Take us straight in. No evasive maneuvers. Jiwon's hands moved across her controls. The ship surged forward, engines burning at full power. On the view screen, the Vex fleet grew larger, more menacing. It looked like flying into the mouth of a monster. Sir, Hyun said carefully, they're charging weapons, all of them. I see it, Daeho replied calmly. 2 minutes. The bridge crew watched their screens, hearts pounding. The Vex fleet was calculating, processing, preparing. Their computers ran through thousands of scenarios, predicting what the single human ship would do. Every calculation said the same thing. The human ship would either flee or attempt long-range combat. No sane commander would charge directly into a superior force, but Daeho wasn't interested in being sane. Engineering, this is the bridge, he said into his comm. Is the gravity well generator ready? Sora's voice came back, tight with stress. It's ready, Commander. But I'm telling you again, this thing has never been tested in combat. It could work perfectly or it could tear the ship apart. Understood, Chief. Stand by. 1 minute, 30 seconds. The Vex opened fire. The view screen filled with light as hundreds of energy beams and solid projectiles screamed toward them. It looked like a wall of death, impossible to avoid. The bridge crew tensed. Jiwon's hand hovered over the evasive maneuvers controls, every instinct screaming at her to dodge. Steady, Daeho said quietly. Hold course, the weapons came closer. Hyun could see individual beams now. Plasma hot enough to melt through their hull in seconds. Commander, wait for it, Daeho said. 5 seconds. 4. 3. The first energy beams were almost touching their shields. Now, Daeho barked. Jiwon activated the gravity well generator. Space itself seemed to bend around the indomitable spirit. The incoming weapons curved away, following paths that didn't make sense, pulled aside by artificial gravity that shouldn't exist. Every Vex weapon missed. Beams and missiles passed by on all sides, some missing by meters, some by centimeters. The ship flew through the storm untouched. Impossible, Hyun whispered. The Vex fleet hesitated. For the first time in the war, they encountered something their calculations hadn't predicted. Gravity manipulation of this type wasn't supposed to be possible on a ship this small. They're confused, Jiwon said, reading her sensors. The fleet coordination is faltering. Good, Daeho said. Confusion is the first step. Take us into the formation. 1 minute. The indomitable spirit plunged between massive Vex capital ships, each one 300 times its size. The enemy vessels tried to adjust, to surround them, to bring weapons to bear. But the human ship was too fast, too unpredictable. We're inside their formation, Jiwon reported. Surrounded on all sides. Daeho stood up. Lieutenant Hyun, arm the quantum collapse bomb. Hyun's fingers trembled slightly as he entered the activation codes. Bomb armed, sir. He looked at Daeho. This is really happening. Yes, it is. Daeho turned to address the bridge crew. In about 30 seconds, we're going to deploy a weapon that will shut down every quantum computer in this system. That includes the Vex, their shields, their weapons, their hive mind connection. All of it will go offline for exactly 60 seconds, Jiwon understood immediately. And in those 60 seconds? We kill them with bullets and bombs, Daeho said simply. Old human weapons. Technology so primitive the Vex never bothered to defend against it. 30 seconds. The Vex fleet was trying to destroy them now, firing from all angles. The gravity well generator was overheating. Sora's voice urgent on the comm. I can give you maybe 20 more seconds before this thing melts. That's all we need, Daeho replied. Everyone brace for quantum collapse. When it hits, you'll feel strange. Your implants will stop working. Any quantum-based technology will shut down, but our brains will keep working and so will our trigger fingers. 20 seconds. Hyun watched the countdown on his screen. The weapon was ready, waiting for the final command. On my mark, Daeho said. He was perfectly calm. like this was just another training exercise. 3, 2, 1, mark. Hyun pressed the button. The quantum collapse bomb detonated. There was no explosion, no sound. Reality itself seemed to pause, to hold its breath. Every quantum state in the system collapsed simultaneously, forcing every particle to choose a single position instead of existing in probability. The effect was instant. Every Vex ship went dark. Shields vanished. Weapons powered down. The hive mind connection, which linked all Vex units across space using quantum entanglement, simply stopped existing. For the first time in their existence, the Vex experienced silence. Each ship was alone, cut off from the collective. They couldn't adapt, couldn't coordinate, couldn't even communicate. All weapons free, Daeho commanded. Fire everything. The indomitable spirit unleashed hell. Ballistic missiles streaked from launch tubes, simple chemical rockets that followed basic trajectories. Without shields, they punched through Vex hulls like paper. Tungsten rods fired from railguns at near light speed tore through armor never designed to stop solid projectiles. Hyun was laughing as he fired, target after target exploding. Ji-won called out coordinates with machine precision, guiding their attack. The ship spun and danced between the dead Vex vessels, pouring destruction into every target. 30 seconds gone. Daeho activated the mine deployment system. Hundreds of explosive mines scattered from the ship. Simple devices with basic proximity fuses. They drifted toward Vex ships and detonated on contact. Massive explosions bloomed in the darkness, beautiful and terrible. 40 seconds. More capital ships died. The Vex couldn't respond, couldn't adapt. They were machines without their computer minds, just metal shells floating helplessly. 50 seconds. Hyun targeted the largest Vex ship, a massive dreadnought at the center of the formation. Sir, that's their command vessel. The primary consciousness node is in there. Then let's make sure it never wakes up, Daeho said. Load nuclear warheads. All of them. All of them, sir. Hyun verified, every single one, 55 seconds. 27 nuclear missiles launched simultaneously. Old human weapons, fission bombs that worked through simple physics, nothing quantum about them. They spiraled toward the command ship, their trails like bright lines drawn across space. 60 seconds. The quantum collapse ended. Vex systems began rebooting. Shields started to flicker back online. The nuclear missiles hit first. 27 atomic explosions detonated inside the Vex command ship's shields before they fully reformed. The dreadnought simply ceased to exist, torn apart by forces older than space travel, by weapons humans had invented centuries ago when they were still killing each other instead of aliens. The remaining Vex ships came back online, but it was too late. Without their command node, without their central consciousness, they were lost. Individual ships tried to coordinate, but the hive mind was shattered. Some tried to flee, some just drifted, unable to decide what to do. Daeho sat back in his chair. Cease fire. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of instruments. On the view screen, the Vex fleet was destroyed. 19 capital ships gone. Dozens of support vessels reduced to debris. The survivors were scattered, running in different directions, no longer acting as one force. Ji-won checked her console. Sir, Redstone 3 is hailing us. The colonists are asking. They're asking what just happened. Daeho allowed himself a small smile. Tell them the war is over. Tell them they're safe. Hyun was staring at his weapons console in disbelief. We actually did it. One ship, 3 minutes. We actually did it. Sora's voice came over the comm, exhausted but triumphant. Commander, the gravity well generator is completely fried, and we've got damage on multiple decks, but we're still flying. Good work. Chief, Daeho replied. He stood up and straightened his uniform. Captain Park, please send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them Redstone the 3 is secure. Tell them the Vex threat has been neutralized. Ji-won composed the message, then looked at him. Should I mention how we did it? Daeho thought for a moment. No, let them figure it out. And add one more thing. Tell them they can pick me up whenever it's convenient. As the message was sent, every long-range sensor in the galaxy received the same information. A single human ship had defeated the Vex fleet. The method was already being analyzed by 1,000 different intelligence services. In the council chamber, the message appeared on Chancellor Vorn's display. He read it 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. Ambassador Mira looked at him. Still think 8 hours of debate was a good idea? Vorn said nothing. What could he say? 24 hours after the battle, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the council chamber, chaos had given way to stunned silence. Chancellor Vorn stood at his podium reading report after report. Every analysis said the same thing. A single human ship had accomplished what the entire galactic military could not. "This is impossible," Fleet Admiral Crick said, his antennae twitching rapidly. "One ship cannot defeat 47 capital vessels. The mathematics don't allow it." Ambassador Mira, who hadn't slept in 30 hours, smiled tiredly. "Maybe human mathematics are different." Sage Loomis, the energy being who had remained quiet during most of the previous day's debate, finally spoke. The council debated for 8 hours. The human acted for 3 minutes. Perhaps the lesson is not about mathematics, but about the nature of action versus deliberation. Representatives from 100 different worlds shifted uncomfortably. None of them wanted to admit it, but Loomis was right. While they had talked, Deho had solved the problem. "We must discuss the legal implications," a reptilian ambassador said. "Commander Kim violated numerous council protocols. He took military action without authorization. Technically, this constitutes don't say treason." Mira interrupted sharply. "Don't you dare. That man saved 4 billion lives while you people were still deciding which committee to form." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some demanded Deho be punished. Others insisted he be honored. The debate went on for another hour before Sage Loomis raised a glowing appendage for silence. "I propose a compromise," Loomis said. "Commander Kim receives an official reprimand for breaking protocol. He also receives the Council's highest military honor for saving Redstone III. Both are true. Both should be acknowledged." After more discussion, the motion passed. Nobody was entirely happy, which usually meant it was a good compromise. Meanwhile, in the Redstone system, the indomitable spirit floated among the wreckage of the Vex fleet. The ship was heavily damaged. Scorch marks covered the hull and several sections were exposed to space, sealed off behind emergency bulkheads. Chief Sora walked through engineering, surveying the damage with a practiced eye. Every quantum processor was burned out. The gravity well generator had melted into a lump of expensive slag. Most of their advanced systems were completely fried. She found Deho in the cargo bay, looking at the empty missile racks and mine launchers. He seemed smaller somehow, less intense now that the battle was over. "We'll need 6 months in a shipyard," Sora reported, "maybe longer. The quantum systems are completely destroyed. The gravity generator can't be repaired, only replaced." Deho nodded slowly. "But the ship is still flying." "On backup systems and hope," Sora replied. "Also, I want you to know that was the craziest thing I've ever been part of. And I served on a border patrol ship that once tried to surf a solar flare." Deho smiled slightly. "Did it work?" "We survived, barely, kind of like today." Sora looked at him seriously. "Sir, we just changed everything. Every military in the galaxy is going to study what we did. They're going to want to copy it." "Good," Deho said. "Maybe next time there's a crisis, they'll act instead of debating." On the bridge, Jiwan was coordinating with Redstone 3 authorities. Shuttles were evacuating wounded crew members to the planet's hospitals. The colonists were sending up supplies, medicine, anything the damaged ship needed. Yun was at his station, watching recordings of the battle. He had watched them 17 times already, still unable to believe they had survived. "We were inside their formation," he said to no one in particular, "surrounded by ships that could have vaporized us with one shot. And we won." Jiwan glanced at him. "Scared, Lieutenant?" "Terrified, ma'am. During the whole thing, during every second, I was sure we were about to die." He looked up at her. "How did the commander stay so calm?" Jiwan considered this. "I don't think he was calm. I think he was focused. There's a difference. Fear is fine as long as it doesn't stop you from doing your job." Around the galaxy, military analysts were having similar conversations. In war colleges and command centers, officers studied the Redstone battle with intense interest. The human strategy was being taken apart, examined from every angle. A Thalaxian general reviewed the footage for the 20th time. "The brilliance is in the simplicity," he told his staff. Commander Kim identified the enemy's greatest strength, their quantum adaptation technology. Then he created a situation where that strength became irrelevant. "By using primitive weapons?" one of his officers asked skeptically. by understanding that the Vex optimized their defenses against advanced technology. They never considered that someone might attack them with simple ballistics and chemical explosives. It's elegant, but not everyone was impressed. In a chitin collective military facility, strategists were concerned. If humans could think this way, combining high technology with low technology using enemy expectations as a weapon, what else were they capable of? Humans are unpredictable, one strategist noted. This makes them extremely dangerous as either allies or enemies. Across the galaxy, human military doctrine suddenly became the most studied subject in every war college. Applications from alien cadets flooded Earth's military academies, all wanting to learn how humans approached warfare. The Vex, what remained of them, were also studying the battle. Their scattered consciousness nodes shared data across their remaining network, trying to understand what had happened. The quantum collapse bomb was completely outside their predictive models. They had never encountered a weapon that attacked the mathematical foundations of reality itself. More troubling was the human use of primitive weapons. The Vex had assumed all species followed a linear technological progression, always moving forward, never looking back. Humans maintained weapons from every era of their development, from rocks and clubs all the way to quantum disruptors. They could fight at any technological level, switching between them as tactics required. This was unprecedented in galactic history. The Vex Collective made a decision. They began withdrawing from all systems near human space, pulling back to their own territory. They would need time to study this new threat, to develop new models, new predictions. For the first time in their existence, the Vex experienced something like caution, possibly even fear. Back on the indomitable Spirit, Deho was in the medical bay with several injured crew members. A young technician had broken both legs when the gravity generator exploded. Deho sat by his bed. "Did we really win, sir?" the technician asked. "Everyone's saying we ended the war, but that seems impossible." "We won this battle," Deho said carefully. "Whether the war is truly over, we'll have to wait and see. But you did your part. You kept that generator running when it should have exploded. You saved lives." The technician smiled through his pain medication. "I just turned dials and read numbers." "That's what heroes do," Deho replied. "They do their jobs when it matters most." He visited every injured crew member, spending time with each one. Jiwon watched from the doorway, seeing a side of the commander that wasn't in any official report. The man who could order a suicide charge could also sit with a frightened young crewman and make him feel brave. Later, Jiwon found Daiho in the observation deck, staring out at Redstone III. The planet looked peaceful from orbit, blue and green and alive. "Second thoughts, Commander?" she asked, echoing what she had said to Hyun earlier. "No," Deho said. "I'd do it again. But I keep thinking about the cost. We damaged the ship. 12 crew members are injured. We used weapons that most people consider unethical. The quantum bomb? Yes, it causes suffering to quantum-based life forms. The Vex felt pain when we severed their hive mind. I heard it in their communication signals." He was quiet for a moment. "I made them hurt to save others. That was the right choice, but it wasn't an easy one." Jiwon stood next to him. "If you had hesitated, 4 billion people would have died." "I know," Deho said. "That's why I don't have regrets. But I do have responsibility. Every decision has consequences, Captain. The good commanders remember that." A message came through from the council, informing Daiho of his reprimand and his honor. He read it without expression. "They're covering their bases," Jiwon observed. "Punish you enough to maintain protocol, honor you enough to look good publicly. Politics," Deho said with distaste. "I saved the galaxy and they want to debate the paperwork." "Welcome to galactic civilization," Jiwon replied with a smile. Deho laughed, a real laugh this time. It felt good. For 8 hours yesterday he had been angry. For 3 minutes he had been focused. For the last 24 hours he had been exhausted. Now, finally, he felt like himself again. "Captain Park," he said formally. "Set course for council headquarters. Time to face the music." "Aye, sir," Jiwon replied, "though I suspect the music will sound a lot like applause." The indomitable Spirit limped toward home, damaged but triumphant. Behind them, Redstone III's colonists were emerging from shelters, rebuilding, living. 4 billion people who had been hours from death. 1 ship. 3 minutes. That's all it took to change everything. The enormous council chamber floated in space above the planet Tertia Prime. Inside, hundreds of alien representatives sat in circular rows, their voices rising and falling like waves. Some had scales, some had fur, and some glowed with their own light. They had been arguing for almost 8 hours now. Commander Daeho Kim sat near the back, his jaw tight with frustration. He was 42 years old, a human military officer with short black hair and tired eyes. Next to him sat Ambassador Mira Cho, a human diplomat in formal robes who kept glancing at him nervously. She could see the anger building in him like a storm. The war had been going badly. 3 months ago, the Vex arrived. They were machines, not living beings, controlled by a single massive computer mind. They learned from every battle, adapted to every weapon. 12 star systems had fallen already. Just yesterday, they destroyed a world called Kepler-7. 2,300,000,000 people died in a single afternoon. High Chancellor Vorn stood at the center podium. He was tall and reptilian with green scales and yellow eyes that blinked sideways. His voice was deep and measured. "We must consider all options carefully," he said for what felt like the 100th time. Hasty action could prove disastrous. Daeho pressed his fingers against his temples. Around him, the debate continued. Fleet Admiral Crix proposed a massive attack using all the Council ships together. He was an insect-like creature with multiple arms that clicked and gestured as he spoke. "We outnumber them 3-1, Crix said. "A concentrated assault could overwhelm their defenses." Daeho leaned forward. "It won't work," he said quietly, but his voice carried. "The Vex adapt within minutes. By the time your second wave arrives, they'll have adjusted their shields. You'll lose half your fleet for nothing." Crix's antennae twitched with irritation, but he couldn't argue. The human was right. 2 more hours passed. A glowing being named Sage Loomis suggested talking to the Vex, trying to negotiate. Daeho almost laughed at that. The Vex didn't talk. They just consumed everything in their path, turning planets into raw materials for more machines. The debate shifted to economic warfare. Perhaps they could cut off the Vex's resources. Daeho shook his head. "They take what they need from conquered worlds," he said. "You can't starve an enemy that eats planets." Another hour crawled by. Daeho watched the holographic display on his armrest. It showed the Vex fleet moving toward another colony world. Millions of people were evacuating, but there wasn't enough time. Not everyone would escape. During a short break, Daeho stood at a large window staring out at the stars. Mira found him there, his hands clasped behind his back in a military stance he couldn't break even when relaxed. "They're doing their best," Mira said softly. "Their best?" Daeho's voice was cold. "People are dying right now this very second, and they're forming subcommittees." "The Council has protocols," Mira tried to explain. "These decisions affect trillions of lives across hundreds of worlds. They can't just act?" Daeho turned to her. "That colony world we're watching? It'll be gone in 6 hours. But sure, let's schedule another meeting to discuss the possibility of maybe considering a response." Mira had no answer for that. The debate resumed. By hour 7, Daeho had stopped speaking. He sat perfectly still, his face blank, but his eyes were hard as diamonds. Mira recognized that look. She had seen it before, during the border wars. It was the look Daeho got right before he did something reckless and brilliant. Chancellor Vorn proposed yet another plan. Form a committee to study the possibility of creating a task force to investigate potential response strategies. Several representatives nodded thoughtfully as if this actually made sense. That's when Daeho stood up. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to him. Even the holographic displays seemed to pause. Daeho was not a large man by human standards, and humans were smaller than most council species. But something about the way he stood made him seem 10 feet tall. "Commander Kim," Chancellor Vorn said, "do you have something to contribute?" "Yes," Daeho said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the chamber. "I've been sitting here for 8 hours listening to all of you talk, and I've realized something." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of creatures from 100 different worlds. "You're never going to act. You'll debate until every world is ashes, because that's what committees do. They talk." "Commander, I must protest," Vorn began. "Protest all you want," Daeho interrupted. He reached up and unpinned his council credentials badge from his uniform. The small piece of metal made a loud click as he placed it on his desk. "I'm done with this." Mira half rose from her seat. "Daeho, what are you doing?" He ignored her, walking toward the chamber's main exit. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. "Commander Kim," Fleet Admiral Crix's voice was sharp. "Where do you think you're going?" Deho paused at the doorway. He looked back over his shoulder, and for just a moment he smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made a decision, who had chosen action over words. "I'm going to end this war," he said simply. Mira was on her feet now. "Deho, you can't just watch me," he said. Then he added, "You know what? Screw it. Hold my beer." He didn't actually have a beer, but the human expression made his point. Several alien representatives looked confused. The translator devices struggled with human idioms. "Commander, this is completely unacceptable." Chancellor Vorn's scales had turned a darker shade of green. "If you take unauthorized military action, you'll be committing treason against the Council." Deho was already walking out. His voice drifted back. "Then court-martial me after I save your asses." The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded Deho be arrested immediately. Others argued about jurisdiction and authority. Fleet Admiral Crix called for security forces. Only Sage Loomis remained quiet. The energy being watched the closed doors with something like curiosity. "Interesting," Loomis said to nobody in particular. "The human has tired of talking. Now he will show us action." Mira sank back into her seat, her face in her hands. She knew Deho's reputation. She had studied his military record. When Commander Deho Kim decided to act, things happened fast. Ships exploded. Battles ended, usually in ways nobody expected. The question wasn't whether he would do something dramatic. The question was how many rules he would break doing it, and whether the Council would thank him or execute him when it was over. Outside the chamber, Deho was already on his communicator, calling his ship. "Captain Park, this is Commander Kim. Prepare the indomitable spirit for immediate departure." "Full combat readiness." The voice on the other end paused, then replied, "Sir, we're docked at a council station. We'd need authorization to—" "We're leaving in 10 minutes, Captain." With or without authorization. Kim out, he walked faster, heading for the docking bays. Behind him, the council continued to debate. Ahead of him, a war waited to be won. 8 hours of talking had accomplished nothing. Deho figured 3 minutes of action might do better. He was about to find out. The human cruiser Indomitable Spirit sat in its docking bay like a sleeping predator. It wasn't the largest ship at the station, not even close. Most council vessels were 3 times its size, built by species that valued overwhelming force. The human ship was different. It was built for speed and precision, sleek and dark against the station's bright lights. Captain Ji-Won Park stood on the bridge when Deho's message came through. She was 34, with sharp eyes and quick reflexes that had earned her command at a young age. The bridge crew looked at her, waiting for orders. "Commander Kim wants us ready for combat?" Lieutenant Hyun Lee asked from the weapons station. He was barely 25, fresh from the academy, still excited about everything. "Did the council finally make a decision?" Ji-Won shook her head slowly. "I don't think the council had anything to do with this." She knew Deho had studied under him at the academy. When he said he was leaving with or without authorization, he meant it. "All hands," she announced over the ship-wide comm. "Battle stations. This is not a drill. We launch in 10 minutes. Down in engineering, Chief Soranam was checking the engines when the alert came through. She was 41, the oldest person on the ship besides Deho, with gray starting to show in her black hair. She had served on 15 different vessels and thought she'd seen everything. "Battle stations?" she muttered. "We're docked at a peaceful council station." "What battle?" Her assistant looked worried. "Should we request clarification?" Sora laughed. "When Commander Kim orders battle stations, you don't ask questions. You just make sure the engines don't explode." She grabbed her tools. "Let's move, people. I want every system at 100%. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Mira was trying to calm the situation. It wasn't going well. "Commander Kim is a decorated officer," she said, raising her voice to be heard over the shouting. "He has never acted against the council's interests. Perhaps we should—" He just walked out of a council session. Chancellor Vorn's scales were almost black with anger. "He's taking military action without authorization. This is unprecedented." Fleet Admiral Crix was already on his communicator, speaking to station security. "I want that human ship locked down. No ship leaves this station without my permission." But Crix was too late. The Indomitable Spirit's engines were already warming up. On the bridge, Ji-Won watched the countdown timer. 8 minutes since Deho's call. The docking bay doors began to open without authorization. Hyun looked up from his console, surprised. Captain, someone just hacked the door controls. We have clearance to launch, but it's not coming from the station master. Ji-won smiled slightly. Commander Kim was always good with computers. She sat in the captain's chair. Prepare for departure. Daeho arrived on the bridge with 2 minutes to spare. He looked calm, almost relaxed, as if he hadn't just committed what several council members were calling treason. The crew stood to attention, but he waved them down. At ease, everyone. He stood in the center of the bridge, hands behind his back. I'm sure you're all wondering what's happening. The thought crossed our minds, sir, Ji-won said carefully. Daeho pulled up a holographic star map. It showed the Vex fleet, a massive cluster of red dots surrounding a blue dot. The blue dot was Redstone III, a mining colony with 4 billion people. The Vex are here, Daeho said, pointing at the red mass. 47 capital ships, over 200 support vessels. They'll start destroying the colony in approximately 3 hours. After that, they'll move to the next system, then the next. While the council debates, millions will die. The bridge was silent. Everyone understood now. So we're going to stop them, Daeho continued. Just us. One ship against their entire fleet. Hyun's voice cracked slightly. Sir, that's suicide. No, Daeho said, and his smile was sharp. That's strategy. He expanded the holographic display. The council thinks the Vex are unbeatable because they adapt. Energy weapons? They develop shields. Kinetic weapons. They strengthen armor. Every strategy the galaxy throws at them, they counter within minutes. So how do we beat them? Ji-won asked. By being completely, utterly unpredictable. Daeho pulled up technical specifications. Chief Nam, I'm sending you some modifications to the ship's systems. They're going to seem insane. In engineering, Sora's console beeped. She opened the file and her eyes went wide. He wants me to do what? She scrolled through the plans. This is actually brilliant. And completely insane. Can you do it? Daeho's voice came through her comm. Sora laughed, a sound with no humor in it. It'll either work perfectly or blow us all up in the first 30 seconds. I'll take those odds, Daeho replied. The indomitable spirit undocked smoothly, pulling away from the station. Behind them, station security was scrambling, but it was too late. The human ship accelerated, its engines burning bright blue against the darkness of space. On the bridge, Daeho explained his plan. It was simple and terrible and possibly brilliant. Hyun listened with growing horror and excitement. Ji-won's expression didn't change, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her chair. The key, Daeho said, is that the Vex think in probabilities. They calculate every possible outcome and choose the best strategy. But humans, he looked around at his crew. We don't calculate. We improvise. We take insane risks. We do things that make no logical sense. And that's our advantage? Hyun asked. That's our only advantage, Daeho confirmed. The Vex have never fought anyone crazy enough to try what we're about to do. Down in the cargo bay, crew members were loading special weapons that had been in storage. Old weapons, primitive by galactic standards. Ballistic missiles that used simple chemical propulsion. Explosive mines with basic detonators. Even nuclear warheads, ancient human technology that most advanced species considered obsolete. Why are we loading this junk? A young crewman asked. His superior, an older woman who had served in the border wars, smiled. Because sometimes old is better than new. The Vex have never seen weapons this simple. They won't know how to counter them. Back on the bridge, Ji-won plotted their course. Commander, at maximum speed, we'll reach Redstone in 3 hours. The Vex will detect us long before we arrive. Good, Daeho said. I want them to see us coming. I want them to have time to prepare, to calculate probabilities, to set up their perfect defense. And then? Ji-won asked. And then we'll do something they never calculated. Daeho sat in the captain's chair looking completely relaxed. We're going to charge straight at them. No evasion, no tactical maneuvering. Just a straight line into their teeth. Hyun swallowed hard. That sounds like suicide, sir. Only if we were rational, Daeho replied. Rationality is their advantage, Lieutenant. It's also their weakness. The ship jumped to maximum warp, space bending around them. Behind them, the council station grew small, then vanished. Ahead, somewhere in the darkness, the Vex fleet waited. In the council chamber, Ambassador Mira stood at the window watching the stars. She said a quiet prayer, though she wasn't sure who she was praying to. Somewhere out there, a single human ship was about to challenge an entire fleet. Chancellor Vorn approached, his anger cooled to concern. Do you really think one ship can make a difference? Mira didn't turn from the window. You've never seen humans at war, Chancellor. We don't think like you do. We don't calculate odds or debate strategies. When we fight to win, no matter the cost. That sounds barbaric, Vorn said softly. Maybe, Mira agreed. But sometimes barbarism is exactly what you need. On the indomitable spirit, Deho made a shipwide announcement. All crew, this is Commander Kim. In 3 hours, we're going to do something impossible. We're going to end this war, not because we have better weapons or bigger ships, but because we have something the Vex don't have. We have the courage to be completely magnificently stupid. And sometimes that's all you need. The crew prepared in silence, each person lost in their own thoughts. Some were afraid. Some were excited. All of them trusted their commander. Deho closed his eyes and ran through the plan one more time. Everything had to be perfect. Timing, execution, courage. One mistake and they'd all die, but if it worked, if it actually worked, the war would be over in 3 minutes, he smiled.